I'm Andrew, and I'm setting out to make better videos for diesel enthusiasts. Follow along as I review products, do how-tos, and share my personal trucks here on Just Diesels. The last time you guys saw my daily driver TDI, it was looking pretty boring and pretty stock. And that was in the video where I talked about whether or not it was worth it to buy those cars. Since that video has come out, I've done some upgrades and this car looks a whole lot different. So before I go any farther, here is the new look of the TDI.
Promise me. Promise me. Promise me.
Now, I know a lot of you guys are already gonna say, I've seen cooler, blah, blah, blah. Basically, this is a very basic setup. This is something I'm gonna be daily driving a ton of miles on. So yes, I could have done some crazy bag setup. I could have done all kinds of stuff that you've seen online, but I wanted to keep the car very practical. I take this thing snowboarding, I take this thing mountain biking, I drive 100 miles round trip to work every day. Like, I needed something where I could take it anywhere. So I was trying to balance form and function on this build, right? And keep it looking cooler than a stock car, but still very, very functional for daily driving without all of the rubbing, scraping, et cetera, that usually comes with a lowered setup. So I'll walk you guys through what I did on this car to kind of make it look like it does. Cosmetic wise, let's start there. Originally, when I first filmed this video, I'd already done the window tinting on the car. So it's 5% on all the side windows and back window. And then on the windshield, I did a 5% brow across the top. That was a nice way to, one, get a little more privacy in the car, kind of cut down on the heat, but it also really looks good on a black car to have a very dark tint. Now, originally, I had been planning to actually black out all the trim on this car. So I was gonna go completely murdered out, if you will, just all black everything. I've always wanted a car like that. But I ended up kind of taking a step back, realizing I was putting a lot of miles on this car and I was probably gonna sell it soon. And so I actually opted to just keep all the chrome trim. Now, the one thing I did do is the bumper originally was pretty pitted, it had been repainted. So I opted to have that repainted, like just a fresh bumper cover, and get that resprayed over at Audubon Collision in Torrance. They did really good work on it. So I put that fresh bumper on. At the same time, I also took the opportunity to 3M gloss black vinyl wrap all of the marker lights in this car. So there's 2 in the front, 2 in the rear. I took the front ones out, wrapped them gloss black, and in the rear, I just left them in the bumper. Again, wrapped them gloss black. And just that little change really cleans up this car. It takes it from looking very basic and normal to looking a whole lot smoother, cleaner body line. So just that little change is huge on these cars. I also ditched the front license plate because they're hideous. So bye to that. After that, cosmetics were pretty much done. I had already debadged the Jetta emblem in the back to keep it a little bit cleaner. So it was off to wheels, tires, and suspension on this car. For wheels, I opted for a 19 by 8.5 Rotiform RSE wheel. That's an ET45 wheel on the ET spec. And then I wrapped that in a 225/35/19 tire. So that's gonna be a little bit bigger than you typically see on a lot of these daily driver builds. Most of these JSW cars daily, I feel like, use 18-inch wheels. I thought the proportions on 19s looked a lot nicer to the size of the body of the car, bigger proportions. So I thought that extra inch just really went a long way to make the car look nicer. Now, the trade-off is that 19s definitely do not ride as nice as 18s. With 18s, you don't have to be quite as picky about potholes. It's a lot smoother and it's a lot quieter. The 19 in this car are definitely on the louder side when you're driving. It's definitely a little bit harsher. If you hit a square edge bump, you feel it. So that's something that's worth noting. Like if you're someone that's big on a smooth ride, definitely go for 18s. But if you're all about looks, 19s is a really nice balance of still being pretty functional, but just, you know, you give up a little bit of small bump sensitivity, things like that. Suspension wise, obviously I really wanted to do airbags or something crazy like that, but I opted for a H&R Street Performance coilover that offers between 1.2, 2.5 inches of front drop and 1.3 to 2.4 inches of rear drop. So what's nice about that is it's adjustable. So if you just did lowering coils in these cars, it's not adjustable, right? You're just stuck at whatever height that lowering coilover is. And what I wanted was a coilover where I could adjust it and kind of fine tune it with my wheel and tire setup. So I wanted something that was still practical and dailyable, but as low as possible, basically kind of trying to balance that like rubbing and scraping on everything with still looking good. So this, I'm pretty happy with this setup. I actually put it on the car myself and then played with the height. So I went all the way from as high as possible to as low as possible while the coil settled, kind of figured out what was the balance with my wheel and tire setup, where I had just a little bit of rub here and there with like 4 people in the car, but I was still able to daily drive it comfortably and have it be nice and low. So this is kind of my spot that I've settled at. I don't actually know the height on the car. I didn't take before and after measurements, but it really depends on exactly your wheel and tire setup. So just go ahead and play with it. When you have coilovers, it's nice. I will say the setup actually rides really nice, especially on the factory wheels and tires with these performance coilovers on there. It is a super smooth ride. It's very well composed. Obviously it's a little bit harsher than stock's a little bit stiffer, but it feels really well damped. I actually really like the setup on this car. So huge step up from the factory suspension that was probably a little bit tired at 50,000 miles. The car's a lot more sporty, nimble, definitely handles a lot better. Way more fun to drive now on this setup than it was stock. So for anyone wondering about spacers, anything like that, these ET45 wheels actually sit pretty flush with the fenders, no spacers needed. I kept a little bit of rear camber on this car as well, because I was having some rubbing. There's a tab for the rear bumper where it attaches to the body that sticks into the fender well. So I kept a little bit of rear camber on the car to avoid that. This is about as aggressive as I could go on this setup without having the fenders rolled, without, you know, doing major trimming, anything like that. I did have to trim the rear fender liners. There's that fiber liner inside of there. I was having some contact with that, did a little bit of a trim on that, maybe like 1 inch or 2 off of it where it kind of sticks out the most into the tire area. After that, no rub on that. So that was a nice setup on this car. Now the final piece of the puzzle on this is actually the Renline skid plate on this car. If you're familiar with these cars, the belly pan's actually pretty low and it's just a very thin plastic sheet. So I replaced that with a Renline aluminum skid plate. Obviously you're not gonna be able to drag the belly of the car across the curb, but it's perfect for times when you go to the snow, there's ice and debris on the road. I've hit a couple pieces of plastic stuff on the freeway. It's just nice to have a little bit of added protection for the oil pan from random road debris. So nice for peace of mind, obviously not, you know, crazy structural element, but it is a little bit of help when you have a lowered car. So there you guys have it. That is my TDI build update. Obviously very simple, very practical setup. There's a lot crazier ones online with air and everything else, but this was kind of my way of balancing form and function. I feel like I did a decently good job. It still looks clean, but it's fun to drive and it's still very practical. So hopefully you guys like this car. I know I've been very happy with it. I've put probably about 15,000 miles on it since I bought it. So that's 15,000 miles in probably about 10 months. So I've definitely had a lot of time driving this car, probably average between 38 and 42 miles to the gallon on most tanks, which is awesome. So I've been very happy with this car overall. I'll probably do one final update video on this car, just kind of like an overall review before I sell it. And then I'll probably end up getting another one because I've just absolutely fallen in love with this car. This is my favorite daily drive that I've ever had. It is so comfortable, so much fun to drive, and still looks cool doing it. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm gonna link to all the parts that are on this build, the coilovers, the hub-centric rings, wheels, all that stuff. If you guys wanna copy this build, go ahead, send me pictures. Thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.